Hi everyone, this is Nick Karn. This is my EDL 853 Module 3 presentation where I interviewed a paraprofessional, a special education teacher, and an administrator as well. So I asked several questions of the paraprofessional interview, but this is the one question that really stuck out to me for him, and he's actually one of my football coaches as well. So we had a pretty good long conversation, about 35 minutes long, of what it was like to be a para and a lot of different things and just the whole day and his frustrations and his successes and like what does he love about the job, what does he hate about the job, all that kind of stuff. So just talking to him for a while, and he's a good friend of mine. So this is the one question that really stuck out to me, and this was the question I asked him: what advice do you have on supervision of special educational staff, including para, speech path, etc., which is one of the questions I took from the module, and really just get the conversation going. And the main thing I took away from this was that it requires constant communication, whether it be via email, walking in the hallway, running into them, phone calls, anything like that, just to get into the communication with those people and to really talk to each other and get feedback on what works for the student or not. And then it just it just really requires data as well and information so they can work properly with that student. And it takes time coaching from the special education teacher, with also and he called it regular education teacher, on how to handle certain things such as behaviors and maybe themes that they've seen in the classroom, such as lack of effort, or maybe they're really working hard for that teacher and they do something different. And to really just get the idea of what the whole student is all about and to kind of figure out what works for them and what doesn't. That's really what it comes down to, is figuring out what the student needs. And every student's different, and you just kind of have to figure it out trial by error. And that really does help with the student, and it does help with the teacher in the classroom. It helps with the special education teacher. It helps with the paras, and it helps with the administrators dealing with the students and their behaviors. So really just kind of trying to figure out what can help them the most, and understanding the student. And that's really a big key to that. So I actually teach a co-taught class with my good friend Mr. Martelli, and we talk daily on this kind of stuff. So it was easy interviewing him as well and kind of get an idea of what it's like to be a special education teacher. And really, the biggest thing I took away from him was that he has so many IEPs that he's got to write, and he's always doing them in class, or he's doing them outside of class. Really, that's the only thing I see him doing when he's not teaching, is doing IEPs. And they're so long. They're sometimes 8 to 10 pages long, and they're very detailed. He does a good job with them, but you have to be very thorough with those because of all the legal aspects that go along with it. So it was interesting to hear him talk about it. And it's he also had talked about dealing with parents and dealing with classroom teachers to solve the problem, as he says. So in general special education, it's very time consuming in our modern public education system. On top of that, you're teaching students that usually do not pick up concepts the first time or require constant redirection. And I definitely see that in my class. I'm one of the few teachers who has this team taught class. And we have several special education students who require a lot of attention and require a lot of interventions. And it's fun and I like it, but at the same time, it's not an easy task. And some teachers just don't want to do it. And as a future administrator, you kind of have to consider, what kind of teachers do you have, and are they willing to do these things, or are they not? And that way you can kind of figure out who's willing to do it and who's, and put them in those classes. But at the end of the day, I think inclusion is very important, and not isolating these kids to a certain wing of the school like I've seen in the past. So really getting them included and getting them in regular classrooms is big. That's what we discussed, and I really enjoyed our conversation with this. I was just surprised on how time-consuming IEPs actually are. and it was interesting to hear him talk about that. So, that was the big thing. Also, he's got to teach regular education courses on top of all the interventions he's got to do. So, as an administrator, you have to really, consider their caseload and really make sure that you're paying attention to that and make sure they're not overworked because, another thing he told me is that a lot of special education teachers get burnt out real quick. And as a future administrator, I don't want to see my special education teachers go anywhere. I want them to stay. I want them to be happy where they're at because I really think that relationship that they build with the students is key, and that takes time. It really does. So that's just something I took away from the special education teacher interview. And the last thing, I talked to Ms. Haygood, who's my assistant principal at Fountain Fort Carson, and the one thing I took away from her is obviously the advice that she had for my first year as an administrator. So she really hammered that the legal aspect is key, and again, reiterating the IEP, which kind of seemed to be a theme throughout this whole thing, is that that's a contract with all members involved, including special education teacher, the administrator, the teacher who's in the meeting, and just knowing the proper ways or processes that you need to move forward legally. And I just I guess I just never really thought about the legal aspect and how much that really plays a role. I always knew it played a role, but I just didn't know the details. So it was really interesting to hear her talk about that. She also talked about overbearing parents. They can call all the time. And to be honest with you, she prefers that over the alternative, which would be the parents who are just never involved with the kid. And they never speak to her. They never speak to their teachers. They never speak to the special education teachers. So, parents that are helicopter parents, so to say, are kind of a pain to deal with sometimes. But at the same time, you'd rather have that than someone who's not involved at all. That's what she told me. So, challenge for her is to have teachers follow the IEPs. A lot of teachers, she told me, don't read those IEPs and don't read the behavioral intervention plans. And I kind of figured that happened, to be honest with you. But I just say as a teacher, get too worried to not read those. So I make sure I read at least the accommodations to know what the student needs and what they need to be successful. So the administrator, just they do so much other than all this, but on top of what they have to deal with every single day, they have to deal with IEPs, and they have to deal with parents, and they have to deal with teachers and special education teachers. And with our growing special education population, it's very important that we know all these things and we make sure that we're doing the right things. So we do our reports the right way, we do our IEPs the right way, we do our behavioral intervention plans the right way. So, and this is the last sentence here. She said that overall, a new administrator needs to be very well organized and learn how to balance all parties involved, like I just said. So, that's the big thing that I took away from what she said was the balance there, and learning how to balance that. She said it comes through experience. It comes through knowing people and talking to them and asking for help if you need it, and communication with your other admin and making sure that you guys are working together and staying on the same page. So that's basically what I took away from her interview. And then lastly, my conclusion, the main thing I took away from all these interviews is that our special education department at our school is frustrated with the systems that are currently in place, and also that the legal aspect of special education is vital to the success of our students. And so as a future administrator, I need to be aware of all those concerns of our paraprofessionals and special education teachers, because sometimes they don't feel like they're listened to. And I think if you can just sit down and listen to them and understand them and really consider their struggles, then we can definitely grow as a school and as a department, as a culture as well, to really just reach our main goal, which is to help every single student in the best way possible. So that's kind of what I took away from all these interviews. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed everything that I talked about. Sorry it was a little long, but it was very, very good assignment, and I enjoyed it. So feel free to comment with any questions. Feel free to contact me with any concerns as well, and maybe some advice. I appreciate it. So thank you guys, and have a good one.